Good evening, and welcome to Spelman College's third virtual town hall with our president, Dr. Mary Schmidt Campbell. The topic this evening is Spelman's grading process for the spring 2020 semester. I am Myra Burnett, Vice President for Institutional Research, Planning, and Effectiveness. Before we hear from our president, let me remind you that this town hall is 1 hour from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We invite you to ask questions during the session. You can do so by clicking on the Q&A function on your Zoom page. The president will try to answer questions in the course of her presentation, and there will be time at the end of her presentation for her to answer additional questions. Many of the answers to questions not addressed during the session will appear on the Frequently Asked Questions page section of the virtual town hall page on spelman.edu. As was the case in our first gathering, the president is joined by members of her senior leadership team, and on this occasion, by members of academic affairs. Let me introduce all of the panelists. Sharon Davies, Provost and Vice President of Academic Affairs. Dawn Alston, Vice President and Chief Financial Officer. Daryl Holloman, Vice President of Student Affairs. Terry Reed, Vice President and Secretary of the College. Ingrid Hayes, Vice President of Enrollment Management. John Wilson, Vice President and Chief Information Officer. Jesse Brooks, Vice President of Institutional Advancement. Helga Greenfield, Chief of Staff to the President and Associate Vice President for Title III and Government Relations. Also with us this evening are Desiree Pettisclo, Dean of Undergraduate Studies, and faculty members, Dr. Angela Farris-Watkins, Associate Professor in the Department of Psychology, and Professor Myra Green, Associate Professor in the Department of Art and Visual Culture. I would also like to mention my role at the college as the Chief Compliance Director for Institutional Accreditation with the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools Commission on Colleges, also known as SACS-COC. Spelman has been continuously accredited by SACS-COC since 1932. Institutional accreditation demonstrates that Spelman upholds academic standards that produce quality educational outcomes for our students. To remain in good standing with SACS-COC, Spelman must follow specific principles of good practice, one of which is to maintain academic integrity in our educational programs and grading. Related to that requirement, faculty must also be responsible for the curriculum and grading standards. Accreditation is important because it allows Spelman to participate in funding programs with the federal government, including receipt of $49 million in student financial aid and about $7 million annually in faculty research funds. It is now my pleasure to turn the session over to the 10th president of Spelman College, Dr. Mary Schmidt Campbell.
Thank you, Dr. Burnett. Good evening. I'm Mary Schmidt Campbell, broadcasting live from Reynolds Cottage on the Spelman College campus. It's good to be with you this evening as Spelman ends its third week of online instruction. Throughout this transition from in-person to online instruction, Spelman students have been actively involved in their education. I so appreciate hearing from each and every one of you. Your comments and insights help us to continue to improve this experience as time goes by. Let me note at this point, for students and faculty, tomorrow is Good Friday. Spelman observes this holiday, and no classes will be held. I want to extend my thanks also to all of the indefatigable faculty who have been helping and supporting each other and working with the support of our extraordinary STS staff, who've been giving training, guidance, and wisdom to everyone all over the campus. John Wilson, our Chief Information Officer, we applaud you and your team, and we applaud all of the staff who continue to work in all of the divisions around the college to make sure that we support the learning experience and keep all of the vital parts of the college running. Tonight, we're focusing on one topic, and that is Spelman's grading policy, implemented specifically for the spring 2020 semester. Before I begin, let me share some reminders, and then we will focus on the topic at hand. We'll introduce our next webinar on Thursday of next week, and as always, even though we'll be taking questions throughout, we'll end with a Q&A. So some reminders. Please tune in for Founders Day on Saturday, on Saturday, April 11th, 2020 at 1 p.m. Eastern Time and 10 a.m. Pacific Time. Seniors, your academic regalia is on the way. We invite you to wear it while you view a live stream of the recorded ceremony. First years, we invite you to wear your white attire during the ceremony. And to seniors and first years, don't forget to post pictures of yourselves in your academic regalia and white attire on social media using the hashtags Founders Day 2020, #Spelman is Undaunted. Students, I know that you have received an endless number of surveys, and we just circulated yet another survey to you. We're asking you about your experience for the past 3 weeks with remote learning. Spelman really needs you to complete this survey. It's the most efficient way for us to get a comprehensive overview of what is working and what is not working, and to continue to make needed improvements with the online experience. And finally, a reminder to all of us who are on campus for any reason. Please wear a face mask and please practice physical distancing. We know now that both measures work. Both measures reduce the risk of infection from coronavirus, so please protect yourselves and protect others by wearing a face mask and by staying at least 6 feet away from one another. Now, let's turn to tonight's main event. Student success is the heart of Spelman, and we all very quickly realized that the abrupt transition to online education posed real hardships for many of our students for any number of reasons. We understand that for those experiencing those hardships, the learning experience was less than what it would have been in person. For that reason, our provost enlisted the faculty to consider a grading policy that the college could implement specifically for the spring 2020 semester that would not only support our students, but comply with our accreditation requirements and enable the college to preserve the academic integrity of a Spelman College education. Now, let me turn the town hall over to the Spelman College Provost, Sharon Davies. Provost Davies, thank you for leading the panel for tonight, and thank you for your leadership.
Thank you, President Campbell. Let me start by describing how we engage Spelman's faculty on the question of whether our normal grading policy should be changed temporarily for the spring semester 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the many disruptions that we know that it has generated in our students' lives. Shortly after our in-person classes went online, leaders of our SGA asked the college to consider expanding our pass-fail policy. Normally, our policy on pass-fail grading is that students may elect to be graded pass-fail instead of by letter grade in some courses, in elective courses. They weren't given normally the option to elect to be graded pass fail rather than by letter grade in other courses like core courses, gen ed courses, or courses that are required to fulfill their major requirements or their minors. The SGA sent me a letter asking if those restrictions could be lifted this semester, allowing students to elect to be graded pass fail in any of their classes. Their rationale was that students are dealing with myriad pressures, disruptions this semester due to having to finish their classes off campus. Some have added responsibilities at home. Some have tenuous internet connectivity. Some are living outside of Eastern Standard Time Zone and therefore have difficulty being present when classes are being conducted in their regular times. So there were an enormous number of reasons why the SGA wanted to have a more generous option for students to elect pass-fail in all of their classes. We asked our student leaders to give us a little bit of time so that we could seek the faculty's thoughts about that rather than answering the question administratively. We do that so that everybody understands out of our commitment to shared governance. Spelman's Faculty Council led the effort to determine the faculty's view about that proposed change. Dr. Pushpa Parekh, our Faculty Council president, agreed to poll the faculty, and Dr. Tiffany Oliver, an associate professor in our biology department, quickly created poll questions for the faculty. The response of the faculty was strong, and I want to thank everyone on the faculty for taking the time to send in their views on that, on top of everything else that they're doing, trying to conduct their classes online. When the results came back in, the faculty's empathy for our students' situations was clear, and a strong majority of the faculty approved expanding the pass-fail option that's normally available to our students only in elective courses to give our students the power to elect to be graded pass-fail in all of their courses. So after receiving those results, I recommended to President Campbell that we make that change for this semester, and she agreed to that change. What that means is that students now have the power to elect to be graded pass-fail rather than by normal letter grade in any class that they are taking this semester. In a minute, I'll go through a number of questions that have been raised about that because there are a number of specific questions that we know that our students are asking. But before I do that, I want to raise a concern that caused some of our faculty not to vote in favor of that change because there was an important concern that worried some of our faculty. Some faculty raised a concern that if students had on their transcripts passes rather than letter grades, that might be thought of as a negative by professional school admissions committees, graduate school admissions committees that look at their transcripts to assess them compared to other students who are applying to graduate and professional school. The worry was that it might make Spelman students less competitive than they otherwise might be if they elected to be graded in the normal way. Now, that was enough of a concern for some of our faculty to oppose the change, but as I said, a strong majority of the faculty supported the change, and so we have made that change. Since then, we have been seeing news reports that graduate schools and professional schools are actually posting that will not be held against students in their admissions processes. So I think that really the point is that everybody is being affected by the coronavirus pandemic, and we in graduate schools and professional schools are not going to fail to see that. So I just wanted to mention that just to explain why some of the faculty voted against the change, but maybe these recent reports would have put those fears to rest. So now I want to invite Dr. Desiree Pettisclo, our Dean of Undergraduate Studies, to join me to answer a number of questions that come up when students are thinking about their new expanded ability to elect pass-fail as an option. Dean P., let me ask you just a number of questions. You and I talked about this a little bit this morning. When we think about the frequently asked questions about the pass-fail option, they tend to fall into a few different buckets. One is, how do I elect to be graded pass-fail? How do I do it procedurally? Another bucket is, should I elect to be graded pass-fail instead of by letter grade? And finally, a third bucket is, are there any alternatives? Is there anything else that I can do? If I'm struggling in a class, if I'm worrying about my grade in this class, is there anything else that is available to me other than opting to be graded pass-fail? So I just want to ask a number of questions to you, Dean P., to help to clear up some of these questions. Let me say that I'm a student, I'm thinking about declaring or being graded pass-fail. Is there a deadline by which I have to make that decision? I'm not hearing Dean Pettisclo answer these questions. Dean Pettisclo, are you off mute?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay.
I apologize. So students have until April 29th at 4 p.m. in whatever time zone the student resides in to declare pass-fail.
Okay.
Next week we will send the applications to the students via email, and they have until the 29th at 4 p.m.
Okay, thank you. And one of the questions that comes up a lot is whether a pass-fail will affect the GPA of a student. What's the answer to that?
Well, it depends. A grade of pass will not affect the GPA, but a grade of F will. Pass will not be factored into the GPA, but the F will definitely have an impact on your GPA.
Okay, so if a student elects to be graded pass-fail, how is that grade determined? Do the faculty participate in that, or is it done in some other way?
Once the student has decided to do the pass-fail option, faculty will submit their grades as normal. They will submit A through F to the registrar's office via our banner system. Letter grades A through C- will be converted by the registrar's office to pass for major and minor requirements. Also English 103. All grades below the C- will be converted to F and will factor into the student's GPA. Letter grades A through D will be converted to pass for core or general education courses. Grades below D will be converted to F grades and will factor into the GPA.
Okay, so that's a lot of detail, and I just want to mention to any student listening that these answers are going to and are in fact posted right now, and we'll tell you how to find them on the website. So if you have questions about any of that, it will be on the website to clarify things, and the dean's office will be available to help as well. Let me ask you, Dean Pettisco, about a student who is struggling right now with everything that's going on. If a student thinks that they're failing a class right now, is there any other option that they have besides taking an F in the course? Because if they elect pass fail, they think that they're failing, that would still end up as an F on their transcript. So what might a student do in that situation?
Well, a student should think carefully about withdrawing from the class. The student should speak to the instructor, and based on where she stands in the course, she might determine that withdrawal is the best for her. Spelman has extended the withdrawal date until April 15th. Students can simply log into their Banner accounts and withdraw themselves from the course. A W will be placed on their transcript. If the professor and the student decide that they need a little bit more time, we can certainly handle those cases individually as they arise. But April 15th is the last day for students to withdraw from classes.
Okay, thank you. If a student is thinking seriously about electing to take a course pass-fail or to be graded pass-fail, do they have to tell their professor?
Well, not necessarily. There's no need, because the professor will submit grades normally. They'll submit A through F to the registrar's office for each student who's completing the course. The grade is converted in the registrar's office if the student has elected the pass-fail option. So she doesn't need to tell the professor, but certainly consultation with the professor is encouraged.
Okay, and students who are on the fence and aren't sure whether they should elect to be graded pass-fail or not might find it helpful, I imagine, to talk to their professor about it.
Most definitely. She could also talk to her class dean as well.
So what about a student who has already withdrawn from a course earlier this semester? Is that student eligible now under this new pass-fail option to be added back in and to take that course pass-fail?
I'm afraid not. The policy does not apply to courses in which the student has already withdrawn.
Okay, so what about a student who elects to, is worried, elects to be graded pass-fail, and then learns that she actually got an A in the class? Can her pass grade in that situation be changed to a letter grade?
No, once the student opts to switch to pass-fail, the grade cannot be switched back to a letter grade after that.
So that's another situation where it would be advisable for the student to be in close communication with her professor, because the professor can be reassuring to a student about where they stand in the class right now. Correct?
Most definitely. Most definitely, yes.
And how will a pass-fail course appear on a student's transcript?
The pass grade will simply be a P in the grade column on the transcript. That's all there is. If the student makes an F, well, of course, there'll be an F there. Spelman will include a transcript note indicating the extraordinary circumstances faced this semester.
Okay. What about honors students? Will designating a class pass-fail affect the standing of students who are in our honors program?
As long as the student maintains the current GPA requirements for the honors program, electing pass-fail will not affect the standing in the honors program.
What about a student who's doing very, very well, may end up graduating cum laude or summa? Will taking a course pass-fail affect that honor?
No, it won't affect that honor either. Well, okay, let me qualify that. As long as the student maintains the threshold for the Latin honor, summa cum, they will earn those Latin honors. The P, remember, is not factored into the GPA. If the student receives an F in any class, that will lower the GPA. Pass, I should say, will not improve the student's GPA. It simply maintains the student's GPA.
Students sometimes have questions about financial aid and scholarships, and whether or not electing to take a course pass-fail will affect their financial aid or scholarship. What about that, Dean P?
For Spelman scholarships, as long as the current GPA that the student has fulfills the requirements of the scholarship, selecting pass-fail will not affect their scholarship eligibility. If the student receives a failing grade, however, their eligibility may be impacted. So we encourage the students to speak to the scholarships coordinator and their financial aid advisor.
Okay, so what about if a student does elect to talk to their professor and ask to take an incomplete in a course because they're struggling at home right now? And so a grade isn't entered, but an incomplete is entered for the time being. Will they be able to take advantage of the pass-fail grade option next semester, for example, when they complete the course?
Yes, they will. If the student has completed the pass grading option form by April 29th, she will be able to take advantage of the pass-fail when the grade is entered next semester.
Okay. There's a small group of students at Spelman who might be struggling academically already and even may be on academic probation. If a student is on academic probation, will it hurt them to elect to take a class pass-fail?
That's really a complicated situation that we would probably want to handle individually. We encourage students to speak with their advisor, speak with their department chair, and certainly to speak with their academic dean. The dean's office is in conversation with the provost, with you, to see if we can't clarify the review process for these students. But pass-fail will not allow a student who's on probation to improve their GPA, and that's what they need to do, is to improve their GPA. So in some cases, we may advise them not to use the pass-fail option.
Okay. Now we have really only gotten through, a portion of the questions that frequently come up around pass-fail, and for that reason, we have actually created an FAQ of these questions and answers to more questions. But in the interest of time, I think we need to hand this back to President Campbell to move us on to some other topics. Thank you, Dean Pettisclo. I appreciate your help in answering these questions.
Thank you, Provost Davies.
Thank you, Provost Davies and Dean P. Provost Davies, as you know, after the pass-fail issue was decided, you and I received a separate petition that was circulated by a group of concerned students who proposed a different adjustment to the grading policy than the one you just explained. Just today, we also received a letter from SGA in support of that petition. Could you speak to that request that was contained in that petition? I see that we have several dozen questions that have come up in relationship to the petition that was forwarded.
Yes, the students asked, or a group of students proposed that there be a universal A through C policy adopted for this semester. And what that means is they were requesting that no student receive a grade lower than a grade of C in any of their courses this semester due to all the pressures that our students are under right now. And so that proposal came in after we had made the decision to expand the pass-fail option, and we had to take that back to the faculty as well.
So we want to spend some time this evening talking about that and responding to that request, because we know that there are a number of students who are concerned with their current circumstances and feel that their current circumstances do make it very difficult for them to experience success for this for the rest of this academic year. Before we have a further discussion about that, I do want Dr. Burnett to return and share with us what the implications could be for our SAC-COC accreditation. Dr. Burnett?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Campbell. When I learned of the student petition for a universal A through C grading policy this semester, I quickly reached out to our accreditor for their guidance. They have responded, and they caution us that guaranteeing that all students will pass this semester would not likely be viewed as maintaining the quality and integrity of the degrees that we award, which is one of the requirements of our accreditation. Also, Spelman is currently under review by SAC-COC for reaffirmation of our accreditation. And I believe to adopt a universal A through C grading policy, even under these extraordinary circumstances, would result in one or more sanctions from SAC-COC.
So what does it mean for us to be sanctioned by our accreditor? What would that mean for Spelman?
If we are sanctioned by the accreditor, they will give us a short period of time to correct the deficiency unless their judgment is that the offense was one that relates to integrity, and integrity offenses can result in removal of accreditation, which would mean loss of the standing that I discussed at the top of our town hall tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Burnett. So in addition to SAC-COC, we also, of course, have the recommendations from our faculty. And Provost Davies, I know that you have introduced this idea to the faculty. Can you tell us what the faculty response has been to date?
Yes, after we got the request from the students, I sent it out to all of our division chairs. We have 4 divisions at Spelman, and I sent it out to all of our department and program chairs. So that represents all of the faculty at Spelman. And I asked them what their thoughts were on the proposal for a universal A through C grading policy this semester. We got back the answers from all of the divisions and departments, and the overwhelming majority of faculty are not in support of that idea. So in combination, their opposition to it, and also the guidance that we are receiving from our accrediting agency, causes me to not be prepared at this time to recommend to you, President Campbell, that students should receive no lower than a C grade. But that said, we're very sympathetic with the concerns that are being brought to us by the student government leadership and our students, and we understand that many of our students are in extraordinary circumstances right now. So we are trying to make it known to them that we have a system of supports that are in place here at Spelman to help them. And there are options in addition to the expanded pass-fail option that they now have. There are options for them to take incompletes and to withdraw from courses if they really have worries about, and the deadline for that has been expanded. So we are hopeful that those supports will be enough with the close communication with their professors and the dean, that we'll be able to see our students through these very difficult times.
So I have a question here that's come in and that asks, why did SAC-COC approve Wiley College? Dr. Burnett, do you have any sense as to why there would be one determination for one college and a different one for another college?
I do not. I know that SAC-COC does apply their rules the same across varying institutions. I am not aware that they have approved the direction that Wiley College chose to go. I saw some information that says that that was Wiley's decision, but I'm not sure that was a decision that came in consultation with SAC-COC. Not every college and university in the southern region is a SAC-COC accredited institution. But even so, there are U.S. Department of Education requirements that all of the accreditors have to abide by. So I cannot answer for what another college chose to do or what another accrediting agency may choose to do. But as I said, that was the guidance that we got from SAC-COC.
So there are a number of questions that have come from seniors who say that seniors cannot make the choice to withdraw from a course and think that they might receive an F if they choose the pass-fail option. And it seems as though for seniors, there is not a reasonable option that is accommodating. Provost Davies or Dean Pettisclo, do either of you want to address the issues facing seniors in particular?
Yeah, I'll start, and maybe Dean Pettisclo will join in. Sometimes the concern that a student has is not about a single course, but it is about it's about whether or not they have sufficient credits by the end of this semester to actually graduate. And that's a complex thing, conversation. We had to take, case by case. And the faculty advisors, the department chairs, and our dream team, dean team, all can give our students very good advice about whether they actually have sufficient credits to graduate. So I want to say that first. And it may be that a senior might find herself in a position where she takes an incomplete or she withdraws for a course and has to maybe take a course over the summer. There's a number of things that we can advise students about, but we would do that on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you. I know that we have on our panel this evening a faculty member, Dr. Faris Watkins. Would you like to comment at this time on any of the issues that have been raised in the petition?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Campbell. I would just like to say that as Provost Davies mentioned, the faculty are very sensitive to the challenges that students are facing given the current climate. And I have not spoken with each and every faculty member, but I have spoken to several of them. And the sentiment of the faculty that I spoke to is that the vote about the pass-fail option was thought to be representative of the faculty's understanding of students' current challenges, and the thought that that would really be helpful. And in a matter of days, we received the petition after voting on the pass-fail option. We received the petition for the universal pass option. And there were very few faculty that I spoke to that were in favor of the universal pass, very few. The majority of those that I spoke to were very much concerned about upholding academic integrity, number one. But number two, interpreting that request, that universal pass request, as students' way of asking for some assurance for a safe passage through their courses this semester. And the faculty, the majority of the faculty that I spoke to, feel that we already have those safeguards in place. Number one, there is the pass-fail option. Number two, students can opt for an incomplete. So if a student is experiencing difficulty, that student, in conversation with the professor and the dean, can opt for an incomplete and then finish the coursework when the climate is more optimal. Thirdly, students can also speak to their professors about accommodations and adjustments on an individual basis. And faculty have demonstrated by voting on the pass-fail option a sensitivity to the fact that many students are dealing with great challenges. I have not heard from any faculty who are insensitive to these kinds of challenges. And so again, the majority of the faculty that I spoke to feel that those safeguards are in place currently. Also, if a student moves into a situation where she is not able to work out accommodations, safe passage in that course, that student can go and speak with the department chair and the dean to sort of enter into a conversation that may be helpful in receiving accommodations and adjustments. So again, the majority of the faculty that I spoke with feel that those assurances are currently in place.
Thank you, Dr. Ferris-Watkins. There's a question that has come in about the timing of pass-fail. And the question that's been raised is that why is the deadline for pass-fail before students know their grades? In other words, what's the rationale if a student is thinking about whether or not to take pass-fail, would they not want to know what their grade is before they make the decision to do pass-fail? Dean P. or Provost or Dr. Ferris-Watkins, if any of you want to answer the question about the timing for pass-fail.
I think students should know where they stand in the courses. They should have some indication. Either the gradebook in Moodle or some gradebook that the faculty is using should have grades posted. They've gotten back their exams, their papers. Their midterm grades would be a good way to assess their performance in the class, but certainly the best way is to simply speak to the professor to see where they stand in the course. I don't know that it would make a great deal of difference if it's, I'm not sure why it's now, but I think it's a good idea for the student to make a decision so we all settled and she can go on and do the best that she can do.
So I have thank you very much, Dean P. So I have a question about, several questions about lack of access to things like a Wi-Fi hotspot, a computer and a printer, and also food insecurity that goes along with that. I do want to let our students know that in addition to the emergency fund that the college has been managing here with resources raised by our alumni, we have just learned today that Spelman will have access to stimulus funds, and at least $1.5 million of those stimulus funds will be available to help with any of those hardships. So we will begin a process very soon to make it possible for you to have an application and to get those funds to you very quickly. So things like acquiring a hotspot, getting a new computer, solving issues of food insecurity, acquiring medicines, acquiring childcare. We'll be able to get funds and resources to you in order to address those issues. There is also a question, several questions that have come up about the impact that pass-fail will have on students who are applying to graduate school. Who would like to take that answer?
Yeah, so let me take that. So we don't have control, obviously, over an admissions committee in a law school, medical school, or a graduate program. But the early signs are that these graduate programs and professional schools understand the pressures that students are under right now, and will be made aware specifically on the transcripts of our students through this note about the context in which the grades in this semester occurred. So So I actually think I'm less worried than some of my colleagues, having taught at a law school for 25 years myself, that a law school admissions committee would look at a student's transcript and see perhaps a number of passes instead of letter grades in one semester and hold that against a student when they have all of these other semesters of letter grades to go on to assess the competitiveness of that student. Now, obviously, that's just my opinion. And if there are particular schools that our students know that they are going to be applying to, it might make sense to go to their websites, because those schools might be posting information about how they would consider passes on a student's application given this extreme situation.
So there are several questions have come in from our students who were studying abroad. As many of you know, we had several dozen students who were studying abroad when the coronavirus outbreak took place. And several of them are having difficulty with their study abroad providers who were supposed to be offering them classes online so that they could complete their study abroad programs. I'm going to ask our provost if she could, in fact, help these students through our study abroad program, if she could lead them to someone there who might be able to help them.
Absolutely. This is the first time hearing that any of our students are having difficulties, but I want to know about them. And we will deal with each student's situation individually.
Thank you. Here's another comment. Here's a comment. I work with professional programs, nursing, physical therapy, and my university has informed me that medical schools are not budging and will not accept pass-fail. What information are students given to make an informed decision? So the decision about medical school is a very important one, because we every year we have several students who are applying to medical school. Do we have comments about that from any of our panelists?
Well, I'll say that that if that may be the case, and we cannot control the decision-making of admissions committees in medical schools, I think this was one of the reasons that a number of our faculty in the health sciences in particular were concerned about expanding the pass-fail option. So again, I would say that it may make sense for our students to go to the websites of the medical schools that they are particularly interested in to see whether or not the school is taking a stance as hard line as that. And if so, and that's their dream school, it might be a reason for them not to elect to be graded pass-fail.
Thank you. Also, Provost Davies, if a student has a complaint, if she feels that something is not taking place as it should in a course or with a faculty member, what recourse does a student have?
Students, there's a grievance policy. If there's an actual official grievance that a student has with a faculty member, we have a policy, and that is available. We also have a new link that students can use to advise the administration about any concerns that they might be having. But I would say that our grievance policy works really well. And the starting position of it is always to encourage the student to engage with their faculty, their professor directly. The reason for that is that 9 out of 10 times when a student does that, the concern can be handled at that level. But if it can't be, the student then has the ability to go to the department chair and the department chair will assist with the concern. And if the student is still concerned after that, they have the ability to go to the dean's office and ultimately the provost office. So there is a wide support network that is available to a student who's having trouble with a professor.
Thank you. Very early on in the webinar, we had a question about what time does registration open on the 27th? Dean P., can you share with us anything about registration on the 27th?
Yes, it'll open at 9 o'clock.
Okay, so that answers that question for our student who asked that question very early on in the webinar. I'm scrolling through some of the questions, and I believe the question about the process for electing into pass-fail has been answered, but Dean P., do you want to take that again?
Yes, next week we will email to the students the pass-fail grading option form. A student can choose to have all of her classes pass-fail, none of her classes pass-fail, or one of her classes pass-fail. So it's the student's decision. She has until April 29th to decide. April 29th at 4 p.m. in whatever time zone the student is in. We encourage the student to speak to the faculty member, their instructor, if they are not sure whether or not the pass-fail is right for them. Any of the class deans are available to assist as well to help students think through the pass-fail option.
Thank you. We've had questions tonight, and we've had questions in the past about our plans for summer and 2020. Very quickly, Provost Davies, do you want to talk a little bit about our plans for summer for 2020?
Yes, it is looking very unlikely that the coronavirus concerns are going to be resolved by this summer. And so we are making the judgment that any on-campus summer programs will have to be canceled if they can't be conducted remotely virtually. And so we are exploring with all of the faculty who are the faculty leads of those programs, and also our enrollment management is involved in these conversations as well to see if we can still offer them in that way remotely, but they will not happen on our campus physically.
So there was a question about peer recitation facilitators that came up in the first town hall. Do we have an answer about that?
I don't remember, President Campbell, what that particular question was about peer recitation facilitators, but if the person will get in touch with my office, we will handle that way.
Okay. We're at the end of our hour, and there were a lot of questions tonight, over 200 questions. So we're going to take a look at those questions and try to group them by category so that we can provide answers to them on our FAQ page. In the meantime, I look forward to your joining us at our virtual Founders Day celebration. We also look forward on Easter Sunday, April 12th, Reverend Nichelle Guidry will post a devotional at 11 a.m. Eastern Time to Sisters Chapel media channels. And at 4 p.m., she will host Rise Again, a resurrection conversation at 4 p.m. with the Dean of Chapel from Wiley College. For those students who are still on campus, Dr. George and I have prepared an Easter gift. We celebrate Easter as a time of rebirth and renewal and look toward the future beyond this pandemic and all of the ills it has wrought. We are working very closely with our faculty to make sure that all of the policies that we do have in place are in place in order to support our students and to support their success. I hope that you will tune in for our future webinars, and we look forward to continuing this conversation, continuing it as a dialogue. We will, as I said, post answers to your question in our FAQ section. And I hope that you can and feel that our faculty and our staff are making every attempt possible to use the policy that we have constructed to find ways for you to succeed. And if you feel at any time in this journey that you are not succeeding, please make use of the process that Provost Davies outlined to make your concerns known to us. We thank all of you for joining us this evening. Until we meet again next Thursday, be safe, be well, and keep the faith.